Welcome, everyone, to the Most Accurate Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Niles. With me are my excellent co-hosts, Jen Akins and Chris Allen. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I think the free agency frenzy has been something, I don't know. I really get excited like this time of the off season, and while it does re-emphasize the fact that the NFL season is really never over. There's always something going on, even though it's the middle of friggin' March. But still, I mean, it makes it exciting. It makes you think about what could potentially happen once the league kicks off again in about 6 months or so. So now I'm excited to be able to talk with you guys again. Jen, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I miss both of your faces. It's been a minute or 10.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk whatever. I mean, there's plenty to chat about.
Everything. Yeah.
Even though Brandon is under the weather, so that's sad.
Boo.
But he's a pro, as always. He'll rock it out.
I'll try not to sneeze and cough too much into the mic. I will say this is the only downside of this time of year is it's when my phone goes up 300% in usage. So I always get that notification that's your usage this week went up this much or something like that. It's always just me just refreshing Twitter every 2 seconds. So that's what I did all day today. But it's good to see both of you. I missed you both very much. We actually took a bit of an off season. We didn't do a whole lot. We had a fun mock draft together, but outside of that, I haven't really gotten to speak with either of you, at least not face to face. So missed you both, and I'm excited to see you today. We're going to talk free agency, right? We've got some signings. We've got some verge of signings, some verge of trades, some things that have happened already, some things that are yet to happen. I want to kind of touch on, first off, the players who aren't going to move teams, those that were tagged. I don't really want to get too deep into them, but Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, all were tagged, not really likely that they're going to move anywhere. And then Geno Smith and Daniel Jones both got new contracts. They're not going to go anywhere. So the Giants offense isn't going to look as different as we thought. Geno Smith comes back to Seattle. I do want to ask you, Chris, Tony Pollard coming back to Dallas. There's been rumors of Zeke Elliott leaving. Do you think that Dallas minus Zeke equals Tony the way people want, or do you think they're going to find someone else to fill in those kind of early downs and keep Pollard's usage about what it's been?
I think they'll probably wind up finding somebody to fill in some of that. I would say, let's say short yardage, third downish, pass blocking type role that they've left Zeke in to fill. But from an opportunity standpoint, Tony Pollard should be the main guy on early downs, passing downs, red zone usage, and all of that, which would make him a top 12 running back, I would say, at the least from an opportunity standpoint. But my only concern is with Mike McCarthy's comments over the past couple of weeks saying they just want to run the dang ball and let the defense do all the work and all those conservative things that we'd hoped the Cowboys wouldn't get to at some point. I mean, do we see the offense as a whole take a step back efficiency-wise so that while Tony Pollard might be this running back that we're all eager to draft in the first couple of rounds because we've seen him be so efficient and be so effective as a runner. We've seen the breakaway runs, him breaking tackles, and also being used in the passing game. We've seen all that usage, but that's when the offense has been clicking. It's when the offense has been top 12 in EPA per play and things along that line. But if the play calling shifts because now it's McCarthy running the show, Kellen Moore now in Los Angeles with Brandon Staley, does the offense take a step back? So they're all really empty, empty calorie touches, essentially what Zeke was getting, right? Over the past couple of seasons. So that's my biggest concern is that while we've been hoping and pining away for Pollard to become that main back, is he going to become the main back for a team that just isn't going to be as efficient as they were in years past?
Yeah, maybe eking out more of those 17-13 victories and things like that, which aren't good for fantasy. Jen, I want to quickly touch on the Giants because Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley will be back. They did cut Kenny Golladay, which isn't really going to affect anything since he didn't play much last year. But this offense in year 2 under Brian Daboll, who I would say had a nice, successful first year in New York. Do you think there's new heights that this team, since they're going to kind of run it back, can reach? Or do you are you kind of expecting same old thing from last year out of these two?
Well, I mean, those two probably same old thing, but I think the receivers, they definitely had room to grow, right? I mean, with Kelly gone and, Wan'Dale Robinson was kind of in and out and I don't think reached, what we all thought could happen there. So, I think they like I said, they have room to grow. I mean, their wide receiver room was kind of random, right? I mean, we ended up with Isaiah Hodgins and other players that actually stepped up, but last year we all kind of everyone stayed away from them in the fantasy world coming in, and so I feel like this year it'll be a little different. I don't know about like targeting them early or anything, but I don't think people will be as squeamish when clicking the button for those guys, knowing that, Jones played well last year under Dable. And I think that, Saquon, people were concerned about the injury, him coming back, and, he showed he's back as well.
Isaiah Hodgins, Oregon State Beaver Isaiah Hodgins. Very excited.
God, I didn't even know that. That's awesome.
All the guy does is catch touchdowns. I love this kid. Let's talk quickly about Lamar Jackson, who was also franchise tagged. It's an interesting tag because they did the non-exclusive tag, which means that in layman's terms, someone can sign him and the Ravens can either match or receive 2 first-round picks. Now, typically, that tag is something that other teams aren't going to mess with because they don't want to give up 2 first-round picks for pretty much anybody in the league, right? But a franchise tag on Lamar Jackson might be worth 2 first-round picks. We're talking about a former MVP. He is coming off 2 injury-marred seasons, but he's still pretty young and looking to get paid this year. Chris, Lamar Jackson, do you expect to see him suited up in Baltimore, or do you think somebody might take that plunge?
No, I don't expect to see him in Baltimore. And that's not me as a Bengals fan saying that I'd be more than happy to see a former MVP in Lamar Jackson wind up like being shipped off somewhere else, either in the conference or if he winds up flipping sides to the NFC. I'd be completely cool with that, being up near Cincinnati, and that's fine. But just with the way that everything's gone down over the past year to 2 years, like when the first discussions over Lamar Jackson extension were coming up, and then now to this past, just this past like 4 or 5 months, or even before the season even started and the contract extension talks were tabled. And now to this, I get why Baltimore did what they did in terms of giving him the non-exclusive tag and going that route, because essentially it's allowing Lamar Jackson to see like what the market is and seeing what the value is going to be. And if another owner is going to take that plunge in terms of providing him the guaranteed deal that he wants. And frankly, in my personal opinion, Chris Allen's opinion, he does deserve to get that guaranteed contract. But on the flip side, how does this look for the rest of the league, and also the precedents that Lamar Jackson is going to set for the other quarterbacks that are currently, not even the ones that are currently negotiating their extensions right now, the Joe Burrows of the world and those folks, but what about the people coming up behind him? So I do think that it'd be easier for Lamar and for the Ravens, quite honestly, to move on from him, at least from a personal standpoint, right? They've the way that they've operated in the past, it does seem like this would be kind of a bridge too far for them, because they've always been one of those franchises that have been more on the, we do things by the book, play things analytically, build through the draft, like that sort of thing. So I understand their position in wanting to move on this way, but I mean, they should have seen this coming right after he won the MVP, to be quite honest. And his style of football kind of lent itself to the way that they built their franchise. And frankly, how else are they supposed to move forward with this? I mean, they're supposed to just get a prototypical pocket passer, like any of the guys in the draft, or maybe even one of the prospects coming up in the next year's draft, in order to kind of keep this thing going. I don't know. But it'd be hard. I'm hard pressed to believe, with the way things are going on, that Lamar continues to be a Raven, at least with the way things are looking right now.
Interesting. You just don't see those franchise quarterbacks move very frequently. And I think we've only seen one franchise tag player actually switch teams. I think it was Sean Gilbert, the big defensive tackle back in the 90s, when free agency was still pretty new. I think that's the only time we've seen somebody tagged and then moved with the 2 first-round picks. Now, we've seen players tag rescinded, and then a trade worked out. We've seen things like that happen, but
Kirk Cousins, I mean, he was tagged twice and then he moved on.
Things like that, but a little bit different. Jen, let's switch over to Aaron Rodgers a little bit. So as of this podcast, the deal is not done, but all indications are that he's going to be a New York Jet. I think they're probably just haggling over compensation. It's possible that Aaron Rodgers is securing a new dark box in New York to make sure that that's there and ready for him if he needs another darkness retreat. He's a vibe. He's a vibe. Aaron Rodgers is a vibe.
Yeah.
Jen, tell me what that means for the New York Jets and those weapons there for you.
I'm exhausted, to be honest with you already, and it hasn't even happened. Like, okay, so earlier today, right? Trey Wingo's like, "Oh, it's almost done," and then I was watching NFL Network, and they're like, everyone on there was like, "No, like they're not even talking right now. There's no, I don't know." So, I mean, I guess we're all to assume it's pretty much a done deal, but I honestly wouldn't put it past it not happening at this point. Like, I just feel like, I guess I'm having some PTSD from last year with the Broncos. Like, it was
sure. Yeah.
It was this whole thing and then it didn't happen. But I mean, obviously, I mean, when you're looking at Zach Wilson versus Aaron Rodgers, even with, the season he had last year and whatnot, it's an improvement for those guys. Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore. I mean, I can't see it not. I would like to think that Aaron Rodgers would be, somewhat rejuvenated in a new place, but I mean, New York's not an easy place, right? With the media and all that. Not that he's not used to media scrutiny. He's been doing it his whole career, but I don't know. I mean, we saw Brett Favre do the same thing, right? And it just, I don't know. I mean, fantasy wise, I don't know that I'll be rushing out to draft Aaron Rodgers himself, but I think the receivers are fine for where they are. I mean, they can really only go up from, what they dealt with last year with the combination of Zach Wilson and Mike White and Joe Flacco at one point.
Yeah,
right?
Joe Flacco too.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have Aaron Rodgers fatigue already. I'm sure everybody does, but I just feel like, I don't know. Like you said, like the vibe, all of it, like I'm just completely turned off from the whole thing. And of course, we've talked in the past every season about, Aaron Rodgers having sex versus Aaron Rodgers not having sex.
I was going to ask that about New York. Like that's a different city. Like, is that going to be an impact?
I don't know his relationship status. Is he still dating that witch person? I don't know.
I forgot about that.
Is that still happening? So I don't know.
Yeah.
Usually when he is in a relationship and he's having regular sex, he has a down year. So I don't know. I haven't done the research in a few seasons. I might need to get back up on that before.
I think this is the key study that we're missing so far.
And I haven't looked into it in a while. So maybe that's.
I'm Googling it right now.
Yeah. And the New York dating scene it's a beast. It's something. So
I'm sure it's a little better than the Green Bay scene,
right?
I mean,
I would think no offense to our friends in Wisconsin,
right?
Of course.
No offense to the ladies of Green Bay, but
just sheer quantity of people,
yes,
right?
Yes, the volumes in Manhattan and the outskirts, the other boroughs, I'm sure are but then again, like he's super weird right now, so I don't even know like who's. I don't know. I don't know what pool he's fishing in when it comes to that kind of stuff.
As of January, him and Blue, they're still together.
Okay. Him and Blue.
Her name is Blue. Okay. Yeah. So, based on that, I'm predicting a down year then for those guys. So yeah, don't draft them.
Oh man, I love it. I can't wait for the Jets to sign a tight end and for me to get really excited about it, and then for the tight end to just stink. I can't wait for that. That's bound to happen.
That's been a thing in recent years, unfortunately. And then to be honest, like the last couple of years, even in Green Bay, like we had a little bit of Robert Tonyan success, but then we kind of didn't. And
he was disappointing last year. So.
Yeah, he really, really was. And then not since the old days. We really haven't seen a lot of good tight end success with Aaron Rodgers. So
True.
So on the flip side, Chris, let's assume Aaron Rodgers does not suit up for the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love, presumably it's Jordan Love time at that point. What does that do to you as far as how you're addressing the Green Bay skill position players?
Pretty much the same way that I would if Aaron Rodgers was still there. And this is not from a Aaron Jones, still a premier running back. That's on the top 12, cusp of top 12, like somewhere in there, since he's getting a little bit older. Same thing for the pass catchers as well. I mean, while we're high on Christian Watson right now, we do know that there is some, I don't want to say flukiness is probably the wrong word to say, but just say that there's some volatility to his game, considering a lot of his passes or a lot of his catches or whatever were more downfield targets. So that might change like in 2023, regardless of who the quarterback is going to be. And a step back in offensive efficiency, like Jen was just talking about. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers has still been there and his dating situation continued to be the same, he might have been, the team might have stepped back in offensive efficiency anywhere from a yards per drive or EPA per play standpoint. So all of those things to say that I would still rank or slash value like most of the pass catchers in the same vein. I mean, we were going to be taking kind of a leap of faith on most of them anyway. I mean, Christian Watson came on towards the back end of last season. Romeo Doubs was in and out like throughout most of the season. Robert Tonyan was essentially a zero. So it's like outside of Aaron Jones, like who are we really like clamoring on the in the best ball lobbies in order to draft from the Packers? And that's even with Rodgers there. So if Jordan Love comes in there, I mean, for the short stint that we saw him last season, I mean, looked fairly decent, at least as a pocket passer. We do know that from a scrambling standpoint, I mean, from a mobility standpoint, that's still there. So could he still make up for a little bit of the passing yardage, at least from an offensive efficiency standpoint, by being able to scramble for a few first downs here and there to keep the chains moving? I think so. I mean, while I wouldn't necessarily categorize Love as a back-to-back MVP winner, but for one season, can they cobble together enough yardage or enough wins in order to at least be competitive in the NFC North? I think it's possible. So it's just, I know we're basing everything off of a small sample size, but overall, I think Jordan Love has shown he's somewhat capable of taking over the job. So, like I said, it doesn't really change much for me, like from a fantasy standpoint, how I'm looking at the offensive weapons for the Packers. It just might be a slight tick down, even though my guess is everybody's going to overreact and then possibly make some of them become a value in drafts.
I have a prediction for you, Chris. This is my prediction.
My
prediction is that Jordan Love is a extremely frequent visitor to your streamer of the week category. That's what I
100%. Yeah.
I feel like he's going to land right in that, like, almost worth rostering every week, but not quite. And so stay roster usage going to be low enough. And I feel like he's going to be a great streaming option.
But honestly, I would almost think that after, let's say like one game, probably like one game against the Lions or something like that, since they're trying to retool their defense. It'll be one game after the Lions. Everyone's like, yep, we knew it. Loves the man. Just put him in, set it and forget it. It's over after that.
It's the new franchise. That's how it's going to work. Jen, let's go to another quarterback who definitely switched teams. We know this for sure. Jimmy Garoppolo is now a Las Vegas Raider. I believe Jimmy Garoppolo is the only quarterback under contract for the Raiders because Jarrett Stidham signed with Denver.
Right.
And we all know Derek Carr is a Saint. Jimmy G with the Raiders, how does that make you feel? I mean, Jimmy G, I think we can agree is going to continue to be like a fringe fantasy option in one quarterback leagues. But how does that make you feel about Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, the other options in that offense?
I think he'll be fine. I mean, he's serviceable, right? I mean, I wouldn't be like running to the boards to draft him. I think that, Devontae Adams, and as long as someone can, get him the ball in the vicinity, I think he'll be fine. Darren Waller, last year was a little bit of a struggle, so we'll see if he can bounce back. But I mean, Jimmy G is set up, right, to at least succeed. You've got Adams, you've got Renfro, you've got Waller, and you have Josh Jacobs back now. So I feel like, Jimmy G is fine. I mean, I don't think, I think he's a fine bridge. I mean, I would assume the Raiders are going to use one of their higher draft picks and draft somebody else. That's what I would think. But and have Jimmy G kind of be the bridge and be there until whoever it is ready to develop. I can't imagine they're, counting on Jimmy G to be their franchise guy for 5 years. So
yeah,
I don't know what his contract even was, 3 years or
I can't remember, but the contract, the way it's structured, the way it looks to me is like a one with options is what it looks like.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
the way the NFL works, like money typically is the first year's guaranteed, the signing bonus is guaranteed, and then everything else is all bets are off. So this one looks structured in a way that they're not going to eat a lot if they want to get out of it after a year.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that, their plan is to draft a young guy to develop, but I think out of kind of who's out there, I like the move. I mean, you're looking at, Baker, Jacoby Brissett. I mean, I feel like he's at least, of course, there's also the durability issue, right? I mean, he's missed
Certainly.
a lot of games. So that is a concern if you're drafting, in best ball. I certainly wouldn't roll in there with him as your QB1 because he may not make it very far. And I don't know that I would count on him in redraft either. But I think it's a QB2 for best ball and whatnot. He has the weaponry to make it happen. And I think he's decent enough to, be able to, get production out of those guys.
Sure. Interesting thing. The Raiders picked 7th. I kind of wonder if Jimmy Garoppolo signing was kind of knowing that the 4 main quarterbacks may not be there on the board at 7. I mean, we might see them drop. It's very possible, but Carolina, Houston, Arizona, Indianapolis, Seattle, those are all potential quarterback spots, and somebody could leap up as well. So
yeah, I mean, they
4
may at
quarterbacks.
this point with that move, they may now wait for a day 2, guy.
Hendon Hooker seems like a good fit there.
mean,
Somebody who is going to need a year. So to get his body right. Very interesting. I love Aaron Rodgers, by the way, that there's rumor that he's going to try to recruit Devontae Adams wherever he goes. Devontae Adams is under contract. Like, he just signed a huge deal. Like, they can't trade him. They're going to eat so much money in that trade. I want
he's
to
over it too. He has the fatigue as well because he tweeted out, "Leave me alone." Like, he's over it.
Yeah, I want to put that to bed. Absolutely. Let's go to the team that Jimmy Garoppolo just left. Chris, how are you approaching San Francisco? They signed Sam Darnold, which obviously is insurance in case Brock Purdy and Trey Lance both can't go. As you're approaching early best ball leagues, how are you approaching the San Francisco quarterback situation?
Just stay away from the San Francisco quarterbacks
completely,
and just draft all the rest of the guys, because with the way that Sam Darnold has played, not during the Jets days, but even during his early parts of the Carolina phases, where it looked like for a time he could be at least a functional quarterback. Like, we saw him scramble for a few touchdowns. I think he wound up in my streaming column a couple of times because he was a decent scrambler. They were actually using him on some designed attempts as well. I mean, I think he literally rolled into the end zone one time because he slipped, fell, and then he rolled into the end zone too on top of that. So it's like, he could produce, like, if put in the right situation. Like, when he had DJ Moore, had Christian McCaffrey, even I think Robbie Anderson was still there. Yep. So it's just like he had the weapons around him in order to succeed, and he did so. He could execute the offense as it was designed. And what other offense within the entirety of the NFL is predicated on providing a quarterback with the right system in order to succeed on a day in and day out basis that essentially took literally the last pick in the last year's draft and turned him into more or less a franchise quarterback. And that's Kyle Shanahan's system. And I know Christian McCaffrey getting a year older, George Kittle getting a year older. I mean, the durability about each of at least 2 of their key weapons might become an issue. But as of right now, I would still just rather draft the pass catchers. I would still drafting Christian McCaffrey in the first round, George Kittle in the first 3 to 4ish rounds. At least I'm guessing that's where his ADP is at. Brandon Ayuk, of course, all those guys I would still target. But from a QB2 standpoint, it's just easier for me to look at the other options because looking at or trying to bank on spike weeks from Sam Darnold they're just too hard. I mean, one, the peaks and valleys aren't going to be enough in order to justify his cost. I'd rather look at the other quarterbacks. The quarterback twos actually do have those potentials for spike weeks. So while I'm not always going to be targeting the 49ers, I'll still look at their pass catchers or their weapons as I typically would. And then I'll just stay away from Sam Darnold, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Jen, that's all as far as players that we know have signed at this point. I do want to ask you a question. There's a lot of quarterback needy teams out there. There's a lot of teams that you could see going after somebody. There's rumors of Baker Mayfield drawing interest in the Bucs. The only quarterbacks I see with a potential to start is Mayfield, Jacoby Brissett, and Gardner Minshew. Is there a landing spot for any of those guys that makes you interested in them, or a team that you're more interested in their weapons if they land one of those guys, or is it no story?
Not really. I mean, I think they're all. I mean, right now I know at least Baker and Brissett are both kind of rumored to be Tampa Bay, prospects. I mean, Tampa Bay has, they have talent, so it's not that I wouldn't target those guys. I think with Baker at this point, I don't know. I can't put any trust in that from a fantasy perspective. Now, from a streaming situation, if he does end up somewhere and can proves that he is the Baker that we've seen play well and not the other, then possibly I would go from a streaming point of view. But I don't think I would invest fantasy wise in any of those guys. I mean, Jacoby Brissett wasn't bad last year, right? I mean, I think he had over 2,000 yards and 12 touchdowns in those 11 games for the Browns. So, I mean, both of those guys right now, Baker and Brissett, are last round. They're both their ADP is over 230 and over, in for both those guys. So, I think either of them are, like I said, about Jimmy G. I think both of them would be a bridge wherever they would go. So, for next year, last round, QB3 maybe, but nothing more than that for me.
Yeah, and I just want to add in Dynasty Superflex leagues. Like, it's a good time to grab Gardner Minshew, Jacoby Brissett, Baker Mayfield. Any one of those guys could sign in Arizona and be some insurance for Kyler Murray, or sign in Tampa or something along those lines. So if you're in a Dynasty Superflex specific league where all the starting quarterbacks are always going to be rostered, grab a hold of one of those guys. They might land in a good spot, might fetch you a draft pick in midseason if you want to make some sort of a trade with a needy team. Let's go into running backs. We haven't had a running back sign yet at this point, but there's some interesting storylines, some interesting free agents. The first thing I want to talk about, Chris, it sounds like Miles Sanders will be moving on from the Eagles. It sounds like the Eagles are going to have a lot of turnover this year, but they have a lot of youth and talent behind them. One of those young, talented players that people are excited about is Kenneth Gainwell, the former Memphis kind of do-it-all back. Showed some promise in the playoffs, had a few little stints during the regular season, but really came on in the playoffs. Do you think if and when Miles Sanders moves on, how interested are you in Kenny Gainwell, and do you think he can be have a much bigger role like he did in the playoffs?
I'm mildly interested. I do wonder about his between the tackles ability. I don't think he showed at least enough efficiency, or like his success rate wasn't as good as Miles Sanders. Yards after contact, like per attempt, like the basic rushing metrics that would go along with as compared to Miles Sanders this past season. So I think the general reaction will be that Miles Sanders out. Gainwell is going to be essentially carrying the mail alongside Jalen Hurts. So we'll and everybody liked Gainwell coming out of college. So now we'll essentially like overpay like for that opportunity. And wherever Miles Sanders was being drafted last year, what was it, like 7th, 8th round, most folks will probably then boost him into like the 5th or 6th round just from the name value. And I don't know if that's the right way to approach it, because again, if we do have some concerns about Gainwell as a rusher, I mean, if there was a chance that he was going to overtake Sanders like in the running back pecking order, that would have happened already. It didn't. I mean, he was fine. I mean, he was serviceable as a receiver, but they still felt the need to also continue to bring Boston Scott along like as well. So it's like, again, he's a do-it-all back, and I think that's fine. It seems like he does a lot of things well, but nothing really at an elite level. So I would not be surprised if they let Miles Sanders walk. Kenneth Gainwell is the de facto starter, but then they draft a running back, let's say even with a late day 2, day 3 pick in order to pair with him, something along those lines, because they've had at least two functional, I wouldn't say starters, but at least complementary backs for as long as I can remember. Like whether it's been Corey Clement, like sitting on the roster, I mean, insert name here, that's been a part of their DNA for quite some time. And now that they are primarily a rushing team at this point, I don't see why they would change that. So I've heard the whole, like they might potentially land Bijan or something like that. I don't think
that's the rumor.
Yeah, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I mean, we'll see here within the next month or so, like at the draft itself. But at the very least, even if Miles Sanders does walk and Kenneth Gainwell does become like the next man up, my assumption is that they'll add somebody in the draft like of note, like given the draft capital, because it's not like Kenneth they actually used a ton of capital on Gainwell himself to begin with. So I mean, that's another thing that we'll have to consider. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Bijan Robinson, that of course would blow everything out of the water.
Oh, that would change everything.
Wherever he lands is going to blow everything we say out of the water. It's just because there's kind of like when we talked last year, it seems like there's not a team that's an obvious, this is the best team for Bijan Robinson to go, where there's absolutely nothing, Jen, let's talk about Miles Sanders specifically. Where's a good spot for him to land? Where would you be more interested in him?
I have 2 spots for Miles Sanders. Number 1 spot is our Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
I would love to see Miles Sanders in there. Both the top guys from last year are free agents, so they may have a very empty running back room down there in Miami, and that's what they've been. That's really one of the missing pieces, right? And then we saw them shore up their corner situation yesterday, which was fantastic. Or I guess on when was that? What day was that?
Yeah, it's all been a blur, but yeah, trading for Jalen Ramsey is amazing.
But yes, they got Jalen Ramsey, and then they have obviously Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle there.
Jalen Ramsey, one of my favorite players. He channeled Drake when they asked him who's on his Mount Rushmore of cornerbacks, and he said it's just him with 4 different facial expressions. It's my favorite response a football player has ever given to a question.
That's awesome. No, but I think that's kind of one of the things. I mean, we know Mike McDaniel is a running back guy and hasn't had that yet. I mean, he's attempted a couple different guys in there, but so I think Miles Sanders, would be interesting there. The other place I think he'd be interesting is the Bills. I mean, they are kind of in the same boat, right? They need that guy. Devin Singletary is a free agent. I think that if he goes there, he could kind of alleviate some of the Josh Allen rushing, work. And get in there and do that. So I think those are the 2 spots that I personally would like to see him.
I like both of those, to be quite
honest. Yeah, I like both of those too, as much as I like Devin Singletary. Do you think we've seen the last of Devin Singletary as a lead back, Jen, or do you think he lands a spot somewhere with a key role?
I mean, I think it just depends on where. I mean, there aren't a ton of lead back roles left. Well, actually, I mean, the league is going away from that anyway.
It's true.
In general as a trend, but with what's available out there, I don't know if there's that many spots for that. So, those are really the 2 places that I've kind of mentioned. So I think Singletary, I guess it depends on where he ends up. I'm not sure what kind of demand there is for him. He's been so kind of inconsistent. I mean, now granted, a lot of it has been the Bills and their offense. So, and what they run and what they do, and they have a quarterback that is basically a running back as well. So I don't know if that's hurt him as far as what he's going to get out there, but I guess we shall see.
I want to see him compliment James Conner in Arizona. That's what I want to see him do. I feel like that's a good spot. Yeah,
I think that's a good spot.
I feel like they do separate things, but you don't have to change the offense for them, and they can kind of spell each other. I like that spot a lot.
It's funny you just did this, and I've been told by my son that that's bad. You can't do both. It's only one. If you can't do
both. What if you're extra hopeful?
I don't know. According to my teenager, if you do both, it's bad. You can only do one. So I think you just
really.
How bad? That's the question.
Well, you
like, am I just like a dumb dad?
True. You know what I mean?
It won't come true.
Yeah,
okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not like you did something vulgar or horrible.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like, was it vulgar?
It just won't. Like, it's not as effective if you do both.
All right.
I like it. I like it. It's like I want to put like percentages that like this is like 37% effective, but this drops it to 16 or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to remember that.
It's
okay.
All
well,
on you, Brandon, if it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, then Devin Singletary for the 37%. You add the snap for the extra 8%. That's how it goes. 45% chance now. That's that. I'm sorry. I'm sick. Have I mentioned that? Did I mention I'm not feeling well?
You never know. You never know.
Chris. So there's some other really good free agent running backs out there. Some of my favorite options, Alexander Mattison is a guy with the potential. Rashad Penny, Samaje Perine has played well when he's spelled Joe Mixon. Any of these guys a favorite for you, a landing spot, somebody you're really eyeing and watching?
I was just thinking about Samaje Perine. I mean, of course. I mean, as a Bengals fan,
of course.
Hopefully he winds up back in Cincinnati. But think about Samaje Perine with the Chargers. I think that'd be a really solid fit. I mean, given their inability to find or draft a complimentary running back to go alongside Austin Eckler. Now, I know just what was it? I think last week the team has allowed Austin Eckler to pursue a trade at this point because I know he's on the last year of his deal. But assuming they get Austin Eckler back in the fold, thinking about having a guy like Samaje Perine back there. I mean, not just for the fact that his skill sets are, it's multifaceted, right? He could be a solid pass blocker. We've seen that's been the case for Joe Burrow. I mean, he's definitely been the one to kind of step up and being the better pass blocker than Joe Mixon at times. And we know that the Chargers offensive line has been either injury riddled or the players that they have in there are, let's say, about on par with the Bengals offensive line. We'll just leave it at that. But also, as a rusher, in terms of yards after contact, like per attempt, missed tackles forced. Samaje Perine has been able of grinding out like those short yardage, like third downs and things of that nature. but also as a pass catcher. I mean, having a guy out there that could also essentially not change your play calling a ton, because you would almost assume that, let's say, when they switched out Austin Eckler for Sony Michel or Larry Roundtree or Isaiah Spiller, most defenses would know that the ball's not going to go to them if it was going to wind up being a pass play. With Samaje Perine, you at least have to respect that would be a part of the play calling that would be available to, well, not just Brandon Staley, but now also Kellen Moore too. So I really like that fit. And I'm thinking just from a market standpoint, I wouldn't think that compared to some of the other names that we've already mentioned, so like the Miles Sanders of the world, the Devin Singletaries of the world, I would assume those guys would command a bit more in terms of like from a contract standpoint. Just looking at like just the general market value, just given their resumes, draft capital, and yada yada. So Samaje Perine on like a 1 year, $3-4 million deal to the Chargers, something along those lines, that seems feasible. And I think it kind of fits into the type of running back that they're looking for in order to complement Austin Eckler.
Yeah, I like that. I kind of like P. Ryan showing up there with the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm hoping they figure that out with Eckler too, because
me too. I mean, if Eckler comes to Cincinnati, as long as it's on a decent deal, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I wouldn't be mad at that.
Well, I think that's what it is. I think he wants to get paid, and the Chargers are kind of balking a little bit. But
yeah.
Jen, I want to talk about one of your favorite players, Jamal Williams, who had a great season last year, like burst out, I think he's still scoring touchdowns right now as we talk. I think
1 yarders, all 1 yarders.
Absolutely.
And then shaking his hips afterwards too.
He's so great.
What do you think about his prospects? Do you think he lands another key role? Are you excited about him?
I honestly think that he's probably going to end up back in Detroit. I feel that for some reason, but I kind of was thinking I would like to see him in Chris's Bengals. I mean, I think that would be kind of fun. Well, I mean, first of all, right, we've got some potential legal issues with Joe Mixon, right? I mean, I don't know.
Always something, yeah.
Always something, but there's a new something, right? So
yeah.
That could be a thing. So I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Jamal Williams, but part of me feels like he's just going to end up back in Detroit. I don't know why they would, let him go after kind of what he did. So I feel like they'll do whatever to make it happen. But if not, I mean, I don't think he's going to end up. He's not a lead back guy, right? So I think there's plenty of spots that could use him. But I think Cincy would be kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
don't hate that.
I like that a lot. The only other running back I wanted to bring up was Deontay Foreman. I just I thought he and Chuba Hubbard were a nice combo in Carolina last year. So I'm hoping Carolina re-signs Foreman. They're already in the process of shoring up their offensive line. They're going to obviously have a new quarterback behind center, or at least I'm assuming it would be hilarious if Carolina traded DJ Moore to get up to number one and took Will Anderson, the pass rusher from Alabama or something. But
I would die laughing.
But yeah, it's going to be Carolina offense. Going to be interesting to look at what they do. Of course, Frank Reich is there now. But I really liked Deontay Foreman. I liked that fit. I liked what we saw from him in Tennessee 2 years ago, and then I thought he played well last season. So that's a name I'm watching to see where he lands if there's an opportunity in front of him. Speaking of the Panthers, Chris, the Chicago Bears have a new wide receiver 1. How do you feel about DJ Moore going to Chicago?
I love it for a couple of reasons. One, I think DJ Moore, if you rack and stacked him along like the other, let's say like alpha wide receivers in the league, I would say he'd probably rank in like the 12 to 16-ish like range. I mean, past like, Jamar Chase, like Debo, and like all the rest of those guys. But to say he's not your prototypical wide receiver 1, but if you are looking for a target earner, one that's capable of winning both inside and outside, Moore fits pretty much like all of those categories. And so he instantly walks into like a ton of opportunity, because looking at the other pass catchers on there, from freaking Dante Pettis, I mean, Darnell Mooney, obviously a good wide receiver, a solid wide receiver too. Absolutely. I mean, Cole Kmet, he's more or less a cult classic at this point. I mean, because everyone's waiting for him to essentially be that tight end everybody wanted him to be like coming out of college. But overall, I mean, it's a pass catching group led by DJ Moore that essentially it puts him in the same situation he was in Carolina, right? Like, decent pieces right when he was there. I mean, whether it was like Robbie Anderson, of course, like working alongside Christian McCaffrey, but then Curtis Samuel was there too. So like alongside like good pieces, but still able to essentially lead his offense in terms of opportunity and whatnot. But also so it's good for DJ Moore, also good for Justin Fields. We don't know if I would say not all of us, but I'd say at the very least, the Bears front office doesn't have a clear understanding of what Justin Fields is as a thrower of the football. They know what he can do as a runner of the football. And so adding a guy like DJ Moore allows them to evaluate him as a passer, which is something that they needed to do since they drafted him, more or less. But now with this acquisition, and not the Chase Claypool acquisition, they now have a receiver that's put in front of them that's capable of winning inside and outside, like I just said, and allows them to actually call the plays that will stress Justin Fields like as a passer to see if he can actually ascend to like the NFL level and actually be that pocket passer that they need to be, and not just the athlete that he's shown to be over the past couple of seasons. So overall, I love it for Chicago. I hope it works out for both parties. I hope it works out for DJ Moore, and he can now work with a functional quarterback on a functional offense. And I hope it works out for Justin Fields, because we saw last season there were just so many reasons why we can believe that the offense was just completely dysfunctional, why Fields was never able to succeed. But now that he has, let's say at the very least, a functional passing group, like from Moore to Mooney to Claypool to Kmet, and then whomever they wind up keeping in the backfield, like whether they bring back David Montgomery, they bring back Khalil Herbert, or whomever, overall, at least it provides enough around him to say that he should be able to show us a bit more or take the next step forward as a passer. So I really do like the trade for them.
Nice. And talking about Chicago, Jen, I can't believe I just glossed over David Montgomery. I didn't talk about David Montgomery. Like, he's one of the key free agent running backs. The Bears obviously trying to surround Justin Fields with talent. DJ Moore. They also signed a little underrated sneaky signing. They signed guard Nate Davis today. Davis is an upgrade on the offensive line for them, which they sorely needed. Jen, it sounds like David Montgomery's not coming back. It wouldn't surprise me if there's no market for him and the Bears get him back cheaply. But what does that do for Khalil Herbert for you? Do you think he becomes kind of similar to Kenny Gainwell, the guy, or do you think they just find another guy to pair him up with?
Khalil Herbert is rough because he's somebody that we've been excited about and then been let down a couple times now. So it's tough for me to get riled up to draft him again and get excited for him to be the guy and then have him not be the guy. David Montgomery is another guy that I can't get super excited about either. So to be honest, I forgot about him too until you just mentioned it. So I guess that's where my thoughts are for that.
How forgettable he is for how many carries he's had in his young career is very surprising.
Yeah.
Maybe it's partially because of how bad the Bears have been. Herbert's been good when Montgomery's been hurt, but when Montgomery's not hurt, then he doesn't get the touches. So unfortunately, but I'll be watching to see what they add, because if they don't add anybody, I'll talk myself way too far into Khalil Herbert, who's a guy I liked in college, honestly. So, Jen, I want to stick with you because you and I have always had an affinity for Robert Woods, and he's really the first free agent receiver to sign, which I enjoy. Like he signs with the Houston Texans, comes over there, brings his blocking acumen over there. Do you think there's anything left in the tank for Robert Woods?
I think I might finally be out on Robert Woods. I say that now, and then talk to me in July when I have 15 shares on my best ball. But I think after last year, I think I might have to be out. I mean, Houston's tough, right? It's a tough sell. I mean, it really is. The quarterback situation is still TBD, right? We don't know exactly who they're going to get. We're pretty sure they're going to draft somebody in the top, but we don't know exactly which one yet. So, Brandon Cooks, allegedly will be gone. So he will be the guy, but he was supposed to be the guy in Tennessee and he wasn't the guy in Tennessee. Yeah. So I think as much as I love him and he's been a target monster in the past, I think this might be the year that I'm out.
I think that's probably fair. He does seem like he did seem pretty done last year.
I mean, he had, and he had free reign. I mean, that Tennessee, there wasn't anybody else to catch the ball in Tennessee, except for the rookie tight end, but who ended up being, the guy, and he wasn't really supposed to be the guy. So,
Good news for Dameon Pierce, though, because Robert Woods still one of the best blocking wide receivers in football. So I want to talk to you, Chris, about Jakobi Meyers. He's a free agent receiver I'm interested in. Obviously has been a quiet fantasy asset in New England. He hasn't been great, but he's been someone you can plug in a lineup. I think he wants to get paid. I think he wants to go find somewhere to go. Is there a fit you like for Jakobi Meyers? Is there do you have hope for him to take another step?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. From a yards per route run standpoint, like Jakobi Meyers has been like one of the more like efficient receivers in the league. And yeah, I know that he winds up making most of his bones as an interior receiver. I think he played almost like 2/3 of his targets like came from the slot this past season and like the year prior as well. And I get that, but he can also still function as an outside receiver if he needs to. My thought would be in terms of a place that he could go and actually perform well. To be quite honest, if he went to the Ravens, I wouldn't be mad about it.
Oh,
I'm
interesting.
looking for at least another like intermediate target, like for let's assume Lamar Jackson stays, but even if they don't, trying to find, let's say, like legitimate like wide receivers that have been a part of that offense has just been something that the Ravens haven't done, which has been one of the key arguments for why Lamar Jackson has struggled as a pocket passer over the last couple of seasons. And so I know that after they shipped off Marquise Brown like to Arizona because they weren't jiving with Greg Roman's system, bringing in a guy like Jakobi Meyers, and while I know that Todd Monken has been more of like the downfield aerial like type of attack, but even if they can have something that's just more efficient, like being able to utilize more of the like short and intermediate areas of the field and not just requiring, Mark Andrews to be that guy. I mean, Jakobi could really kind of come in and be that player that could win not just on the inside, but also on the outside, which would serve as a good complement to Rashad Bateman, assuming he can stay healthy, because that was also Bateman's calling card. I mean, he could function as a split out wide, but he could also like perform the flanker roles as well and like move inside. So both of those guys playing together, I think they could play off of one another, and whomever winds up being the quarterback will be able to benefit from both their skill sets being side by side.
I like that. That's kind of an interesting spot, interesting landing spot. That Ravens offense is going to be interesting to watch as the offseason progresses to see who they add and what they look like in the preseason with Monken there in charge. Jen, I want to talk to you about another older player, another player that might find himself on a new team here. Adam Thielen's been let go by the Vikings. Where would you like to see Thielen land? Is he somebody that you think has some more fantasy value ahead of him?
I do. I'm kind of weirdly into Adam Thielen. I feel like a really good spot for him would be the Bills. I feel like,
oh yeah,
put him back with Diggs. Let's get it rolling again. They need another guy in there, right? They need that wide receiver too. He's a good veteran guy that is there. I think he still has some stuff in the tank. He's super cheap right now. I mean, he's going as wide receiver 76, an underdog with an ADP of 171. So, throw him up there with Josh Allen and reunite him with Diggs. And I don't know. I mean, it's not like I'm ready to draft him early, but I think he's, if he ends up in a spot like that, I think he has at least one more season. Even if he falls in for, 6-7 touchdowns, that works too.
Yeah, I mean, wide receiver 3 is a value. Like, if he's a wide receiver 3, that's a valuable option out there. So I'm with you. And I'm rooting for him, too. Just seems like a likable dude. I'd love to see him up there with Diggs, another player who I love. So lots of other kind of wide receiver 2, like maybe potential guys out there. Alan Lazard's out there, Juju Smith-Schuster, DJ Chark, Darius Slayton, Mac Hollins, McCole Hardman. Chris, any of those guys stand out to you with a landing spot that makes you feel warm and fuzzy?
DJ Chark or McCole Hardman to the Chargers, I think would be really solid.
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking about like any of their downfield passing attack. I mean, outside of Mike Williams, who was hurt for however many games, like last season was like 4 or 5 games or something like that, at least 3
Sounds
or 4, right? Or something along those lines. But think about the other wide receivers with the Chargers that were given meaningful targets like last season. Who is it? DeAndre Carter, Jalen Guyton, Michael Bandy, Who else? I mean, Josh Palmer was still catching it. He still caught a few like downfield, and he was okay, like as an outside receiver, but primarily as a, I wouldn't say Keenan Allen clone, but just operates better in the slot. But in order for
Carter was kind of that guy.
Yeah, and so in order for them to really be this downfield passing attack, which they really need to be, I mean, we've talked. I don't know how many times we've talked about Justin Herbert and the fact that the dude has just a cannon attached to his right shoulder. But if you don't have enough weapons downfield, like good weapons, like good efficient pass catchers downfield, outside of Mike Williams, who will be 29 this year, if I'm remembering correctly.
Wow, that was fast.
So you're going to need younger talent, or you're going to need just more effective talent downfield in order to really continue to like help Justin Herbert progress as a passer. So Gerald Everett, I think he's going to still wind up still being with the team. And we already talked about Austin Eckler potentially leaving the team. Keenan Allen's not getting any younger. So trying to have at least not necessarily, they don't have to draft like the next, their answer. I mean, that could be a potential solution, but signing free agents like McCall Harbin, like DJ Chark, some of those guys that can play on the outside, but can also win in those contested catch or even just intermediate areas of the field, I think would be the best bet for them. So I do like DJ Chark to get to the Chargers. I think that'd be a really good spot for him.
I love that fit. Jen, is there one of these receivers that you like that you're interested in, or should I move on to tight ends?
Let me see. I can't remember who you mentioned. Juju, Lazard. No. I mean, we didn't mention OBJ.
Oh, we didn't. Do you want to talk
about him? Yeah. I know there's been kind of chat about him to the Cowboys. I mean, they definitely need another guy in there. So I don't know if he's the guy or one of these other guys is the guy. But I would assume the Cowboys are going to go after somebody because.
Can they pay for them? Like how much money?
I don't know where they are in the cap, but.
I think they're going to restructure or cut Zeke. They'll do something and they'll get some money that way.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Odell Beckham is, he had a full season to recover after his injury during the Super Bowl. So I don't know how much he has left on the tires there, but I feel like, what is he, 31, 32? I don't even know. Or is he much older? I don't know anybody's age anymore.
So
everyone's
2014,
younger than me, so.
Yeah, he was a rookie in 2014. So 9 years or so. He's probably 30-ish.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, he should still, if his knee is fine, then I think that he's an interesting, spot to land somewhere. That's about it, though. Out of those guys you named, none of the rest of them are sexy enough.
Okay. Well, then tell me, let's stick with Dallas, Jen. Tell me about Dalton Schultz, because he's probably the marquee free agent tight end name. Sounds like Dallas probably isn't going to bring him back. Is there a spot you'd like to see him land?
I would like to see Schultz in Detroit. They, traded TJ Hawkinson, and they still had production out of that position. Brock Wright and Shane Zylstra combined for 9 touchdowns last season.
That's right.
They still have, I mean, there's room for a guy in there and I feel like Schultz would be great, just slide right in there and do his thing. So that's the main place I'd like to see him. Once again, I know we mentioned Houston and how gross it is, but it would be nice for them to actually have and focus, on the tight end. They haven't had a tight end. And I mean, I actually looked it up for another article I was writing. At least a decade since they've had like a name there that has done anything for fantasy wise.
That long?
Had to be Owen Daniels, right? Had to be the last one.
There's like Ryan Griffin. I mean, there's all these names and none of them have done anything in years and years and years. I mean, I was looking at our data only goes up to 2013, but wow, that is 10 years. Jeez. Okay. So there hasn't been any like, I don't even think they've cracked like tight end 2 numbers in 10 years. So, they've got, once again, a new era in Houston has begun. So maybe they will actually focus on the tight end position, and it would be, interesting. I mean, there's, like we said earlier, there's plenty of targets up for grabs there because we don't really know what's going on there. So
Owen Daniels. Yeah, that was the one that came to mind almost immediately.
He wasn't even that, like, I don't know what his best finish was, but maybe a game or two.
Yeah, he was probably always a tight end 1, but not like a high end tight end 1.
Yeah, like tight end 10 or something.
Yeah, he was probably always in that range.
And that was probably 10 years ago. So yeah, it's been just like a wasteland of just, well, maybe this is the year, they would get a rookie in there and we'd all be excited and then nothing would happen.
Yeah.
They had like Darren Fells for a while and then they had, I forgot.
I keep hoping for Brevin Jordan. He was hurt last year, but I keep hoping for him.
But they just don't get the targets. Like they just all are blocking tight ends there. At least that's what the scheme has been. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see with D'Amico Ryans there. He maybe it won't be such
maybe they'll bring in Schultz and turn it all around.
Maybe. Chris, Jonnu Smith was traded to the Falcons today. I think it's important to note that because Kyle Pitts is basically a receiver. And Jonnu Smith has had success in that offense before. So do you think he can kind of revive his career and get back into that at least streamable territory now that he's in Atlanta?
100%. Being reunited with Arthur Smith, I'm pretty sure they've met each other before at some point, or so they have some familiarity. So the coach has familiarity with the player's skill set. The player has familiarity with what the coach does from a schematic standpoint. We already saw the Falcons utilizing a bunch of like 2 tight end sets like last season. So like while it hasn't been as fruitful from a fantasy perspective, it's not like we were rushing out to draft any of the Falcons tight ends. I mean, outside of Kyle Pitts, which turned out to be just a complete disaster.
Yeah.
But overall, I agree with you. I think that does help like Kyle Pitts. Because looking at how he was being deployed on the field as more of a deep threat in order to pull safeties away and allow coverage in order for guys like Drake London in order to get open underneath, it could work in reverse. Because now if you have another credible threat in Jonnu Smith in the intermediate parts of the field, that might dictate coverage to actually move forward and make a guy like Kyle Pitts seem like the more appealing target downfield and create explosive downfield, which is something that they weren't able to do last year with Marcus Mariota. So hopefully Ritter can take the next step, or if they wind up trading for Lamar Jackson, maybe we'll see that happen, which would be just awesome.
I want Ritter. Don't put anybody else in Atlanta.
Hey, he was a former Bearcat just like myself. So it's just like, hey, I'm more than happy to see. I want to see him succeed. Absolutely. And with the amount of money that the Falcons have thrown around in free agency, like earlier today, since they signed Jesse Bates.
They signed Jesse Bates, man.
Yeah,
they got your guy.
Which kind of hurt. But still, overall, looking at the way that Jonnu Smith could be used within that offense, I think it's useful for him, and it's also useful for the rest of the pass catchers in the offense too.
I like it. I'm interested in Jonnu Smith over there. I have one more question, and then we'll let everyone go. My favorite candidate for the guy who signs with the Jets that I get too excited about and makes me extremely disappointed, and a guy who I have to ask Jen, is there anywhere Mike Gesicki can go where he'll become Jen approved?
Probably
no.
No. He
nowhere.
Remains on the not approved forever and ever. That's just part of the deal. No, I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Would you approve him just for me if he went to the Bengals?
Yes. Yes. Because I definitely approve Bengal tight end. I've ridden with CJ Uzoma. I've ridden with Hayden Hurst. Like I'll ride with Bengal tight end. Yeah.
So Mike Gesicki's only hope is
he will be approved if he is a Bengal. Yes.
There we
go.
There's limited spots. I just think, the Dolphins. It wasn't a good fit for him. At least the last season or two. So, yeah, maybe I may switch the approval. It's not a full. It's not a lifetime ban.
Not a lifetime ban. I love it. I love it. Well, Chris, Jen, thank you so much. This has been fun talking about these guys. I can't wait to refresh Twitter 500,000 times tomorrow and continue to look into all this stuff. Hopefully the Aaron Rodgers stuff ends soon. No matter how it ends, hopefully it ends soon because I'm tired of it as well. Always a pleasure once again. Listeners, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Jen Akins NFL, at Chris Allen FFWX, and at 2 Guys Brandon. Thanks so much for checking us out and have a good day.